Hi, everyone. Welcome to another session where I have the great honor to interview Dr. Yvonne Greenstreet, who's CEO of Alnylam. Her background's well known. She joined Alnylam in 2016, became CEO in 2021. She has a long, distinguished career in the pharmaceutical industry, both at Pfizer and GSK before. And we're looking forward to hearing about how she's navigating one of the most exciting companies in this industry, particularly given Flagship's orientation towards platform, with a platform that is being highly productive. So welcome to this discussion, Yvonne.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here, and I've just got to kind of acknowledge your success, Noubar. I mean, I think clearly one of the most successful venture investors, but equally important, or perhaps even more important, I think the contribution that Flagship has made to driving forward innovation in our ecosystem has been tremendous and delivered, huge impact for patients. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you. That's kind of you to say. So I'd like to start kind of with this point about platforms and just ask how going from Pfizer and GSK, where you oversaw a lot of development of new medicines, and going into Alnylam, how you thought about strategy differently and uniquely when it comes to such a platform compared to if you just had 2 or 3 drugs to develop and then more to license in, et cetera. So tell us about that transition into Alnylam.
That's a great question. It's probably worth starting by just reflecting actually on the history of Alnylam. So Alnylam was founded about 20 years ago, on the basis of the potential of RNAi to impact human health. And the company had a long journey de-risking the platform and achieving delivery of siRNAs initially to the liver. And that really opened up an incredible set of opportunities that we were able to progress. And I was fortunate that when I joined the company in 2016, Alnylam had been able to achieve delivery to the liver, and we were beginning to progress some clinical opportunities. So I came in at a time when we had a line of sight to developing a transformative medicine. That being said, we didn't have positive clinical data at that time. We're still waiting for our phase 3. We're a couple of hundred people, and there was a lot of risk still ahead of us. But I think we were driven by really, I think what's different in smaller companies and platform-based companies is really a commitment to leveraging the technology that you have in your hands and turning that into medicines. And it allows you to think very broadly, actually, about your strategy, because we're really following the science with what we do. We're thinking about where is it that there's the greatest unmet medical need, where we can point the potential of RNAi to deliver transformative medicines for patients. And that means that you're not just going to be a company that's focused on cardiovascular or focused on neurology or focused on inflammation, but you're really going where the science tells you you're going to be able to make impact on patients. And I think that's the main difference between working in a larger company where there tend to be therapeutic franchises and you keep trying to deliver to those therapeutic franchises. We follow the science.
So again, staying on the platform theme, obviously you had a lot of early stage programs in the early days, but you chose to take a few forward.
Yeah.
And you could have just kind of thought, well, I'll just do one thing and then we'll go back to doing other things. But you guys advanced many different programs. How have you thought about progress versus breadth versus what you do yourself, what you do with others? I know there's been a complex set of decisions that have been made. I'd love to get some insights on that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think what was critical for the company, as we thought about strategy when I joined in 2016, was to ensure that for at least one program, we were able to deliver clinical proof of concepts. Actually, we were very focused in moving forward that program, and that was our first generation TTR medicine Onpattro. And as we moved that forward, it became clear that there were a couple of other opportunities that were in rarer diseases that we could move forward in parallel. So we moved those two because we could see the potential to deliver real impact on patients with, severe diseases where there were no other treatments. So I think actually our strategy initially was fairly focused. Now, when we were able to have the approval of Onpattro and the approval of Givlari and the approval of Oxalic, we then really had a commercial portfolio. Actually, now we have a commercial portfolio of about 6 medicines that have come out of our labs, which we're incredibly proud of. And it puts us in this really unique position as a biopharma company where we have marketed portfolios, delivering revenues. We have this rich and broad pipeline. We can go into that a little bit more if you like, because that is a broader pipeline that's now not looking at less common diseases, but also more common diseases. We're anticipating continued revenue growth over the next several years, particularly now that we have what we call our flagship franchise with Amvuttra. So I think we're a company that's absolutely poised to continue to grow and deliver innovation to patients and significant revenue growth over the next several years.
So I'm gonna say something that you wouldn't have any way of knowing, but also not most people, since I haven't really gone back. But it's an interesting coincidence you reminded me of. So Flagship's been around for 25 years.
Oh, really? So we're about the same age.
Yes,
and you can tell it looks like we're about the same age.
There you go. Yeah. But importantly, in the early days of Flagship, what you won't know is that we were approached by the licensing folks at MIT to take a look at siRNA technology.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring it up is because it struggled in getting any kind of backing.
Yeah.
And so they had a hard time convincing people that you could make a medicine out of siRNA. This would have been 2002, 2003. Right. And what was remarkable, and I'll confess that I got it wrong, was that I worried about whether a single agent of siRNA could affect cell function enough to be therapeutically useful, or whether you'd have to come up with 2, 3, 4 different siRNAs. And it was unknowable. It's one of these uncertainties that we often run into. To the credit of the people, John Maranganori and others who backed him, they actually kind of made the bet that a single agent could do that, let alone how you can deliver it and all sorts of other things. So for the first time, you brought me back to 25 years ago to think about how this played out. But to be fair,
it took a decade.
Yeah. A decade, yes.
Really.
A decade of partnerships, a decade of
pain.
Yeah, exactly.
A decade of pain.
Right.
Okay, and a decade that required continued commitment, perseverance, resilience through all the ups and downs.
Right.
It was not a journey for the faint-hearted.
Oh, exactly. And so, but here's what I was going to ask about that, right? So in these kinds of things that are, I tell people in biotechnology over the years that most of the time you're working on things that are not yet known not to work. Except once in a while they work. And so you got to go into it expecting that it might not. Now, in the kind of passage of time, when would you say you felt as a leader that this was going to work, and not only work once but multiple times? Surely it's before it already worked multiple times. Yeah. But when and how did you think about it and said, you know what, all this work is actually gonna be productive?
So I think the key hurdle that the company needed to overcome was delivery. So I think when we were able to demonstrate that we could affect liver delivery, I think we knew then that there were going to be a number of medicines that we'd be able to progress, because there's so many exciting targets in the liver, and that allowed us to build this incredible portfolio of medicines. That was really the first stage of the company, and I tell you, getting that first approval with Onpattro was an incredible moment, a transformational moment for the company, where we were treating actual patients with a technology that really come from a science paper, 15 or 16 years before. So that was a really big inflection point, for the company. Then I think, the next inflection point for the company was when we recognized that not only could we achieve liver delivery, but we could look at delivery to other tissues, because RNA it's a naturally occurring mechanism. It's in every single cell, and there's no reason why we can't envisage that this technology is going to address a whole range of diseases in different tissues. And I tell you, when we were able to crack the code for CNS delivery, I mean, I had goosebumps, because once you're able to affect delivery, then you have a chance of being able to address important targets and potentially impact significant disease. And I'm really pleased with our progress in CNS, by the way, where we're moving forward some programs for some really significant neurodegenerative diseases. And then, when I think about where we are as a company today, so, we have Amvuttra launched for patients with TTR polyneuropathy. There are about maybe 40 or 50,000 patients with this disease manifestation globally. We delivered a landmark study called HELIOS-B, which was assessing vutrisiran, Amvuttra in patients with cardiomyopathy. This is a much larger market, talking about 300,000 patients, and only 20% of those patients are diagnosed and treated. And we delivered phenomenal results in terms of being able to impact these patients' efficacy with respect to cardiovascular mortality, disease progression, quality of life. And this is really going to be our flagship franchise. And this has really opened up now this next chapter of growth for the company, because we're now looking at potentially being able to bring to market a medicine that is going to be a multi-billion-dollar opportunity and really help a lot of patients. And what this does is it allows us to now have the firepower to continue to reinvest in our emerging pipeline. So this is, again, today, right where we are now, is another inflection point for the company as we look forward to what we can do with what we have in our hands.
Great to hear. So, part of what you're describing, I assume, and I want you to comment on this, is a product of the platform being kind of modular.
Yes.
And so that you get better delivery, it opens up a whole bunch of opportunities, you get better payloads and better stability you get. And so that also is without a lot of precedent in the biopharma industry, in that everything is a fresh start and you design these molecules from scratch and you do a lot of work, but then the next one doesn't benefit a whole lot from that, except for maybe know-how. So
actually, that know-how is incredibly important.
Yeah.
So just to give you a comparison, it probably took us 7 or so years to figure out how to get into the liver. It took us 2 years to figure out how to get into CNS. So actually, we're building on the capabilities that we built over time. And as the leaders in RNAi therapeutics, we intend to take this capability and apply that to many other tissues going forward. So there is a learning here that we can build on.
But it must manifest in assuming higher probability of success for the next program. How have you found the willingness and ability of Wall Street or even other partners to buy into what is clearly a higher probability of success that comes from the experiences you've had than should be attributed to yet another small molecule?
Yeah, no. So we have, I'd say, possibly an unprecedented probability of success to date. If you look at the probability of success of moving from phase 1 to phase 3 in the industry, it's about 6%, maybe 10%. If you're going after genetically targeted opportunities, our probabilities of success are in the order of 50, 60%. It's a really high-yielding platform, and I think that's a very attractive message to investors, because they now have greater sense of belief that if we point the technology to a particular target that we understand, that's going to result in an important medicine for patients. So the success builds on the previous success.
Yeah, so just on it, and given your CEO hat now, you also have obviously a medical hat and many other hats, but giving your CEO hat, part of what you need to do is to project potential value in the future. That is what driving investors. So in this industry, historically, people value preclinical programs at 0, early stage phase 1 trials at near 0, and then once you have human proof of concept, it's infinity. That reality is a reflection of the very low probability of success. Is the inverse true in your case? Are people willing to look at your preclinical pipeline and say, you know what, given this higher probability of success, and even though it's not certainty, but it's certainly not 2%, 5%, I'm willing to attribute value to that. Is that
It helps. We would still argue that we think our pipeline is undervalued because people don't fully understand what we have in our hands. I mean, we have, we're going to have 25 programs in the clinic, by the end of 2025, addressing some really important diseases. I mean, there's some several multi-billion-dollar opportunities that are in our pipeline right now. We're progressing a medicine for hypertension. It's going to reimagine the treatment of hypertension, addressing the issues with currently available hypertensives and delivering continuous control. It's a big market. We've got a program for Alzheimer's disease that we're very excited about, and we think RNAi has the opportunity to really make a difference to these patients. And we also have a program that we're just progressing for Huntington's. And I don't think actually there's a full appreciation actually of the magnitude and scale of opportunity that we have in our pipeline. Fortunately, having a marketed portfolio, particularly with the flagship franchise that we're building with Amvuttra, investors can actually see their way to what that could deliver in terms of revenue growth. Because I talked about the size of that market, it's huge and growing. And so I think it helps to have that marketed product that really creates this flagship franchise for the company. It's a little bit like what Vertex had with the cystic fibrosis portfolio, with what Regeneron had with Eylea. We've got our Eylea. And I think that gives investors a lot of confidence that we're going to be able to build this company and deliver continued growth over the next several years, for many, many years to come.
Super. So two other things I'm going to touch on before we run out of time. One is, we're living at a time where even though this industry has for a very long time been a major consumer and generator of data and all the associated informatics tools, we now have, with the newer generative AI tools, capabilities that were not really available to us before. In addition to productivity gains and other things, what are some of the ways in which you're thinking about gaining even further speed and reach with applications of AI?
It's a really good question. Actually, I'm going to pass that question back to you in general, because I know that you're investing in AI. I mean, when I think about, the opportunity that we have to deliver to patients with the technology that we have, and I've talked about the importance of tissue delivery. I think AI is a place where we can really start to think about tissue delivery. Target identification is another really important area. Really understanding, we're partner with a number of different genetic databases, but trying to understand which are the most impactful targets that we could go after, what are the kind of sequences that we could consider. So I think there are real opportunities to leverage AI to help us move more quickly, find more substrates. But I have to say, I think we're still at the early stages of truly understanding what these advances can bring. And I'd be interested in your perspective. I know you spend a lot of time thinking about companies that are focused on this.
Well, I mean, I think I agree with you that it's hard to determine what the best use and the first use should be. So we have the flexibility, since we start 6 companies a year.
You can do a lot of things.
So we can try them in a lot of different areas. Where we see some unique capabilities is, on the one hand, in the optimization of things that really require you to make millions of things. I mean, I would say that however good you've become at optimizing particles, optimizing delivery, optimizing siRNA, there's a whole nother dimension there that I'm sure your scientists are going to work on. The area that's of interest that we talk less about these days is, a lot of us make, maybe less so with the genetic medicines or the nucleic acid medicines, but a lot of times we make medicines that work only on a small number of people who actually get them. And then we struggle in doing trials big enough to show that there's a benefit. I think with AI, the ability to create a kind of a set of micro-staged progression of a disease so as to catch a more homogeneous subset of patients to treat that are not at a stage because the medical profession deemed them as cancer stage 1 stage, and then every few years. You can get early, but you can also create a homogeneous set, which if you do, our expectation is that many drugs that won't score well on all comers,
on broad populations,
will become. So I think in your area too, there might be some applications. So because we're running out of time, I'm going to just go to one other topic, which is just leadership in general. I mean, I have the great fortune of interviewing a lot of great leaders. You have your own style. Everybody has their own. Give us a sense, kind of after a long journey, getting to a role where you're now leading a major platform company in the pharmaceutical industry. How are you thinking about kind of the balancing act that leadership is, especially leadership with uncertainty. I mean, on the one hand, I'm sure you're tempted to portray a lot of certainty, but deep down, you know, there's a lot. You wouldn't be doing this if there wasn't a lot of uncertainty, because there's no value if there's no uncertainty. But how have you found the communication needed, the inclusiveness, et cetera? Just tell us about leadership as you see it in 2025.
Look, we're a people business. We talked about technology, both, you know, technology in life sciences, you know, AI, et cetera. At the end of the day, we're a people business. And I think what really makes the difference is having a group of people that are aligned around a common vision, that are absolutely passionate about delivering to that vision, and have what we call in Alnylam a challenge-accepted culture. And really, you know, failure is not an option, and really making sure that we drive forward what we need to do in the organization. As a leader, you know, I'm a leader that appreciates having a range of perspectives. I think having a variety of voices around the table generally leads to kind of a better decision. You know, and I'm a leader that believes that people do their best work if they're inspired around the work that they're doing, and therefore communication is very important. And one of the things that we do at Alnylam is set these bold goals, which people think we're crazy for doing sometimes because they look as though they're unachievable at the beginning, but somehow we always achieve them. And what that does is it really aligns the whole organization around what the focus is of the company. We have a very clear vision and mission. That hasn't really changed over the last several years. So I think it's that consistency of vision, mission, accountability, you know, everybody feeling a part of what we're doing that I think allows a company like us to deliver, you know, extraordinary success. And, you know, and we've been able to do that. So something must be working.
Fantastic. Actually, in the even shorter time left, I will ask you to do one last thing, which I'm sure is not, well, I'm going to project the time frame that's beyond what Wall Street cares about.
Right.
So imagine yourself kind of transported 10 years from now,
Yeah.
and you're looking at Alnylam. Maybe you're leading it, maybe somebody else is leading it, and just look at the Alnylam you'd be proud of and describe it to us, just at a really high level. What has become reality in 10 years?
Okay, before we go to what's become reality, I think it touches on something that is incredibly important to me as we build this organization, because oftentimes as companies scale and they become bigger, they lose their focus on science and innovation. So to me, success would mean that we continued to innovate, our innovation engine continued to hum, and we're able to kind of move forward a pipeline. I mean, for me, the dream is actually, can we democratize RNAi, and can we treat hundreds of millions of patients with the technology that we have across a diverse range of disease areas, and really fulfill the mission that we have, which is to harness this technology to impact human health.
Well, it's a great way to end. Thanks for doing this discussion with us, and thanks for everybody who participated in watching this. Dr. Yvonne Greenstreet, our guest, CEO of Alnylam. Thank you.
It's been wonderful being here. Thank you very much.